Hey guys, I'm back. It's been a little while. I decided to move here into my room, just because like it's a little bit more comfortable for me, and like this is where I do a lot of reading and thinking and stuff like that. So today I actually wanted to do a little something a little different. I know some of you have been asking me to do an update on the tinnitus stuff, which I'll do eventually, but something's just been on my mind. So recently, I think it was 2 months ago, marked 2 years sober from drinking for me. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I thought maybe I'd talk a little about that. So this here is a non-alcoholic beer. Got it from work today. It's oatmeal dark, non-alcoholic craft brew. I still do love beer, and yeah, I used to drink a lot of it, so I decided to stop, and yeah, let's talk about that. So growing up, I was around a lot of drinking, and my family big drinkers, so I think that it just kind of happened naturally for me. It was just something that I just thought, when you get home from work, when you've finished a big project, or when you're at home alone, or whatever the occasion, a drink should be involved. And I think that I just grew up into my late teens and early 20s sort of copying people around me, and not really thinking about the long-term effects, about what could happen to me. So yeah, and then I'll talk to you a bit about my breaking point, and I think when I hit rock bottom with like drinking, for me, and I think for me that was when I was traveling. I've been to Europe a few times, and I went on a recent trip to Germany, and it was a uni trip, so it was like a study tour to the Berlinale, the film festival, when I was studying film. And I went a little bit early, so I got there about 6 weeks before the school group. And how old was I? I would have been 20, 21 at the time, and or 22, no. Yeah, 21, 22. And I had this kind of 6 week bender of just drinking. And I used it when I was traveling around through Germany, parts of Belgium, Czech Republic. And it was just a great way to meet people. So I'd go to these hostels, and I go to the front desk and just have a beer, like maybe a wheat beer or a German lager, and ask them about what were some good places to go to. And then I'd meet other travelers at the bar, and we'd go together to maybe another bar or a live music concert. So yeah, for me it was just an easy way to socialize, and this turned into a 6 week bender. And a week before I met the uni group, I was at Hamburg in the north, and I got so drunk. I got so drunk on a night out, I didn't remember getting home, and I woke up in the morning, like I was in this hostel room by myself, because it was a cold time of year. It was in the winter, and I had this hostel room to myself with like 3 bunk beds, and I woke up on like another bunk bed on the other side of the room, like on this pizza. So I'd like brought a pizza home with me, and like I was laying in the pizza, and so hungover. I felt so sick. I've been drinking for so long, so many weeks nonstop, and I had this irritation on my stomach lining. So it was like a form of alcohol poisoning, where my stomach lining hadn't been able to repair, and I felt this stinging in my stomach whenever I'd eat or drink something, and like it was just eating away at me basically. And so I went to the chemist. I mustered up I felt so sick, but I stumbled across the intersection, went to the chemist, and the lady put me on hydrolyte, and sort of like this gut repairing herbal supplement. And I was sort of bedridden for like 3 days. I couldn't get up, I couldn't eat or drink or like go anywhere. And then I sort of slowed down after that, traveled back, and traveled back down south. And when I came home from that trip, it was around the start of COVID. And that was when I think, and for a lot of people, I think with COVID, like, I was like, oh, I'm stuck inside, I'm miserable, I really need to work on myself. And so I started getting into like these kind of non-alcoholic beers and sort of rotating between them with alcoholic beers. And I think for me, it was like coming home and like finishing a day of work or finishing something and cracking open a cold one just made me feel good. And even if it wasn't alcoholic, that feeling of like opening a beer and drinking it was easily replaced by this great new invention. I mean, non-alcoholic beer, I mean, it's been around for a while, but it only really hit the market around that time. So I think the first one I really liked was Heineken Zero. And then back then I think it was only Heineken Zero and Carlton Zero here in Melbourne. That was all we really had. And then, yeah, now there's all these amazing craft beers. Sorry. So I started doing that, and then I've been playing in the music scene, and I started to realize that I was using the drinking to sort of feel confident getting on stage. So I'd be like, okay, after I've had 2 to 3 drinks, I feel the edge has been taken off enough to get up and play. And I think it was in January, what year is it? 2023, so be Jan 2021, that I sort of thought, okay, well, if I'm going to drive home, I can't drink, and someone has to drive the band's gear. So it was just me and one other person at that point. And so I thought, well, I'll stay sober for the gigs. And then I just kept doing that, and I realized that I didn't really need it anymore. And around that same time, I met this girl in Germany who had a parent who was an alcoholic, and she recommended me this book. So it's called It Will Never Happen to Me, Children of Alcoholics. And I started reading this, and I just felt like I understood so much about the illness and the problem and the denial process that goes into it and the culture around it, especially when there's people around you that are drinking. And there was this survey at the back of the book that said, if you've, let's see here. Children of Alcoholics Screening Test can be used to identify latency age adolescent and grown-up children of alcoholics. So I did that test, and then, are you an alcoholic? Appendix B. And that was, to answer this question, ask yourself the following questions and answer them as honestly as you can. So things like, do you drink because you're shy with other people? Have you ever felt remorse after drinking? Do you crave a drink at a definite time daily? do you drink to escape from worries or troubles, and so on. And it said there were 20 questions, and it said, if you answered yes to 3 or more, you're definitely an alcoholic. And I answered yes to 7 out of 20. And so, yeah, I just thought it's now or never, because I was going down that path, and I was using it to feel confident in, say, like a sexual context or an intimate context, or getting on stage, or going out with big groups and meeting people. And so I started to realize that it was a crutch. It was something I was relying on. And so, yeah, from that day on, I was like, no, you know what, I'm going to give this a few months, see how it goes. And then after, it's been 2 years now, 2 years and 3 months, I think. So, yeah, and I'll just talk a little bit about how that progressed. So I would say that the first 3 months were the hardest. And I think I still get cravings for alcohol, and that's where this comes in. Like, just beer in general is something I really liked, and like I think like it's a psychological thing, and just having a cold one, like, it does it for me, like I don't need to it doesn't need to have alcohol in it. I think that when I first started drinking them, I got disappointed, my body did, because I'd drink I'd get like a 6-pack of Heineken Zero, and the first one would be great, and I'd feel this like relaxation come over me. But after I drank 2 or 3, I think my body realized that, hey, I'm not feeling the alcohol, and then I'd get a bad feeling. So these days, when I do drink non-alcoholic, I try and keep it to just 1 or 2, because I feel like my body got disappointed that it wasn't getting that hit. So, I mean, it's not so bad anymore. I think that was just at the beginning. So yeah, so I started doing that. And when I first started going out with friends, sober, there wasn't a lot of like now you can get a non-alcoholic beer in like almost every bar, but back then, it was a lot more rare. So I'd just have to drink water or like Diet Coke or something. And yeah, so then after that 3-month period, I started to be myself again, because at the start I was really awkward. And I think one thing that really helped was that when the night, so at the start of the night, you'll look around and you'll realize that like everyone is a little awkward. It's not just you. Like, even if they're on their first or second drink, they're not used to being in, people aren't used to being in huge groups at a bar sober. So when they first start drinking, they're like, oh, okay, like, oh, I better get another one, And but after everyone had loosened up, I loosened up too, even though I wasn't drinking, because everyone around me was relaxed. And I think that what happened is that I got used to being so loose and relaxed sober that I just began to be like that all the time, even at the beginning of the night, because I just learned that I could feel like that without the alcohol. And what I also realized was that it was more about people around me and not myself. So, imagine that you were in a room and you were totally sober on your own and you were in a happy place. You wouldn't feel that awkwardness, if you're not if you wouldn't feel that social awkwardness, I should say. And then when the people come, that's when you feel nervous, when you're out at a bar, when there's people looking at you and stuff. But that's an external thing, that's not you. It's you reacting to an external circumstance or stimuli. So I think another thing I learned is that it's the way that I think people perceive me that really contributed to that nervousness, like in a social setting. Actually, another book I read that helped with that, God, I don't have it here. I've got the second one in the series. The courage to be happy and the courage to be disliked was the first one. And this is talking about Adlerian psychology, so individual psychology, which is something that really helped me. And starting to realize that even being on stage and not drinking, being sober, not relying on drugs or alcohol, was that, what people think of me is not my task. And I think that Alfred Adler put it clearly when he said, there might be times when people don't think well of you, but that is not your task. And there's this thing called the separation of tasks, which goes, okay, we have a difficult situation. I feel awkward in this situation. Am I fulfilling all the things I need to do? Yes. Am I behaving in a way that's acceptable, or am I being a nice person? Yes. Well, that's all I need to worry about. And if other people look at me in a funny way, or I'm out at a bar and I'm thinking, well, what does that person think of me? Well, that's not your problem. So I think that reading into this kind of stuff, really helped me. I'll talk about some more books that helped me along the way at a later date. And then work. So I still work in hospitality and around alcohol. I think I still do get cravings to drink, but I think having the non-alcoholic beer really saved me, because I can still be like everyone else and fit in. I mean, I think that honestly, like, even though I don't care if someone knows that I don't drink, I just get tired of explaining myself. It's like you go out and someone sees you drinking water and they're like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Like, why not? And they make a big deal about it. And, it's just such a task to explain that every time. So having non-alcoholic beer, and even if you bring like a stubby holder, sometimes I do that. It just hides it so that you don't have to explain yourself, because let's be honest, people like, they get intrigued by people that are different or that aren't doing what they're doing. So it's a conversation starter, but it's also exhausting. So, having all these non-alcoholic options just kind of help to lubricate the situation and make it a little bit more streamlined, I think. And also help to satisfy the cravings. I think that's the main thing I want to say, is that, coming home and drinking a non-alcoholic beer just kind of, it hits the spot, and it gets the job done. And I think that if it wasn't for this, I definitely would still be drinking. So if you have any more questions about my sobriety from alcohol, or the journey, or anything that's involved, leave a comment below or message me. I'd be keen to talk about it more, and hope you have a good day.